So welcome everyone. I'm really excited about today's presentation, and I think obviously you all are as well, because this is one of our bigger turnouts in a while, and we're really excited about it, especially with collaborative family engagement kicking off and really getting underway here at Big Country CASA. Our understanding of cases from a parent's perspective and what support they have, what help they have, is just really part of our efforts to collaborate better and encourage those families and support those families on this journey. We all want the same thing. We want those families to succeed. We want them to get put back together, and we don't ever want to see them in care again. So I think we all share that passion, that desire for healthiness, for wholeness. So thank you all for coming today and for hearing. Before we get started and before I introduce our guest, I'm going to throw up a poll. Now, if you're on the phone or you're on a phone where you can't participate, that's okay. But I'm going to launch a poll right now. And it's 3 quick questions, and it's just multiple choice. So the first one is your ability to connect to parents. What was your ability to connect to parents? And then your parents' response to CASA. Were they disinterested? Were they okay with this? Were they engaged with us? Did they kind of develop a trusted relationship with you? And then on the last one, your view of your relationship with them. Do you feel like you have one? Do you feel like you have a strained one, or do you work well together? And some of you even have a really good relationship with those families and you're collaborative with them. So this will just kind of give Sarah a good understanding of kind of where we are on our relationship with parents. So we are up to about 58%. I'm going to give you a couple more minutes or another minute to finish that, if you'll do it as quickly as you can. We are up to 70%. If you're not seeing it, it might be hiding behind a screen. So don't worry about it. But if you can see it, try to do it. We're at 75%. So I'll give it another minute here. Okay. So we are still at 75%. We have 27 of 36 that have responded. I'm going to give you 30 more seconds, and then I'm going to end the poll and I'll launch it where everyone can see the responses. Okay, I'm going to end it and I'm going to share the results. So on the ability to connect to parents on cases, thankfully, the majority of us had a workable relationship. 30% have a difficult relationship, which is kind of understandable. It's a tense situation, but I love that 22% have a collaborative relationship, because that's where we're really trying to get. So I like that. The parents' response to CASA was okay with us in the majority. That's good. And then it was a tie for second with disinterested and engaged. So that's kind of interesting. And then we have trusted. 7% actually have a trusted relationship with those families. And I love that. And then on the third one, the relationship with parents, some have none, but some had strained. But again, great. 37% of us have a workable relationship with those parents. And then the second, 22% have a good relationship. So I really like that. And before we get started, I was just going to really say, it's an interesting dynamic, I guess, with the parent, was that on one of my cases that did end in termination of parental rights. And it was really difficult. Mom struggled with drug use and could not get clean for even a month during her case. So it was a really difficult, sad case. But I had a good relationship with mom in spite of that, to the point where 2 years ago, might have been last fall, actually. I'd have to look back. She reached out to me on Facebook to say, I have a family member that's in the middle of a CPS case in another town, and we don't know what to do. They were kind of at a loss, but I told them, I know someone I can trust that I could reach out to. And to be able to have that trusted relationship with a mom, even after her case ended like that, I think that's really important for us to understand. Our goal is to just have a mutual respect, human respect for one another. So I hope after today's meeting, today's presentation, that we'll better understand how we can do that, how we can support, how we can collaborate, how we can encourage, and how we can empower. And so I love this ministry, this organization. I think that I gave Sarah some words earlier that had been sent in to me. And one of those words was unsupported. And so she's going to talk to us today about how they're there to support these families. So Sarah Newsome has been with Parents Empowering Parents for 3 years. In 2018, I've met her, and Jessica is not able to be with us today. She's ill. But I met them a couple of years ago. I'm not exactly sure how long ago, when I actually got to go and meet the parents and visit with a lot of the parents at a meeting one night. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah and let her share her heart, share her presentation. You guys give her a round of applause for coming today. We appreciate her giving up her time to share. And Sarah, do you want to see that poll anymore, or are you okay with me?
Oh yeah, you can close it. Thank you.
Okay.
It was really helpful.
All right, guys. So I'm going to turn it over. Sarah, you are welcome to get started.
Okay. Give me 1 second, y'all. Okay. So my name is Sarah Newsome. Jessica Bills is the other parent liaison here in Region 2. And as Raul said, she could not be here today. But I'm going to talk to y'all about who we are, what we do, who we serve, go through a little bit about what we do in our group, and then some things we would love for CASA to know. So we are the Region 2 Parent Liaisons, and our email addresses are right here, and they're also on the flyer that y'all may have already received. So just to clarify, y'all may have seen PSG, PCG, PEP, and all these acronyms, which y'all are probably used to working with the department. So just to clarify, the PSG is the Parent Support Group. And everybody in the state has a different name for their parent support group. So Jessica and I chose the name Parents Empowering Parents. So that is the name of our local groups here in Region 2. And those are the groups we do with families. On the state level is the PCG, and that's called the Parent Collaboration Group. And that is when all of the statewide parent support groups get together, and in that role, we serve as an advisory panel to the department. And so we might advise them on publications that they're going to release, sometimes new legislation, sometimes they have other stakeholders that want to hear from the parents' perspective. And so that's on the state level, what we do as the advisory panel. So I'm going to tell y'all a little bit about my story. The left picture is me about 24 hours before I went into treatment. That was January 9th of 2016. So my daughter is currently 15. She went into her first foster home right before her 4th birthday. We had several safety plans prior to that. I honestly don't even know how many. We had been separated at most for about a month, a couple times prior to our first legal case in 2009. And she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and while she was removed from me, I was made to leave the hospital at that time. And I was on meth. I had started using meth when I was 17, and I relapsed when my daughter was about 3 years old. And so almost a year later, we ended up in our first legal case. And that's when she was diagnosed, and my attorney advised me to leave the hospital. I had a warrant, and I couldn't pass a drug test. And so I had to leave my daughter there. And I'm sorry. So that time, my addiction got so much worse. I went home, and I'm sorry, y'all, I was not thinking I was gonna cry. I went home and I couldn't look at the pictures on the wall, and I knew that I needed to stay clean, but the only thing that would keep me from using or from crying was using. And so my addiction got way worse than it was, and it took me many months to get to treatment. And I did go to treatment. I think it was about 9 months later. And very shortly after I got sober, like within the first 90 days, CPS, actually when I was still in treatment, they were rushing me to find a place to give her back to me. And I really needed to go to a halfway house, but instead I moved in with my dad, and they gave her back to me when I hadn't even been sober for 90 days. And before my case had closed, I was already drinking again. After my case closed, I was relapsed on meth very shortly after my case closed. And we, a couple years later, ended up in another case. And that time I did joint conservatorship with my father. And my dad kept my daughter for a year. And he was actually going to give her back to CPS because he was so overwhelmed. And so I picked her up and I took her. And I had never gotten sober that time because, I mean, I was separated from her and I didn't get treatment. And so when I took her back from him, I was not sober. And within a couple of weeks, we had lost the place where we were living, and I was bouncing all around Texas with her, and ended up in our third legal case. And that was the summer of 2015. And so that time she went back to a foster parent, to someone that had her the first time. And this was a wonderful woman who had her the majority of the time in our first legal case, and someone that we had kept in contact with. And so when I called her trying to find a place for my daughter, she immediately picked her up. And so my daughter, her name is Hallie, she got to go to a home with someone she knew, with kids that she knew. And it was just a blessing. And so, but again, every time I was separated from her, my addiction got so much worse. And I did not get sober for many months that time. I don't know exactly how many, well, let's see, it was the summer of 2015. So I went into Serenity House in January of 2016, January 9th. And CPS, they were not happy with me. I decided to stay here in Taylor County. I came from San Antonio. I had a lot of fears about going back to San Antonio. And so I decided to stay in Taylor County, and that was at the advice of my counselors, my sponsor. And I just trusted God that that was the right choice, and that if I was making the right choice for my sobriety, that He would honor that. And so I stayed, but San Antonio was not happy with me. And we went to court, mediation, and they kept telling me they were going to go for termination. They said, we don't care how long you've been sober. We don't think you can stay sober. And so I went every court hearing all the way through the winter of the next year, with them going for termination. And I broke down in a meeting, and this guy told me, he said, you have to get okay with the worst possible scenario. And he said, go home and write it down and pray over it. And if you can get okay with it, you can stay sober. And so I did. And I wrote down if my rights were terminated, And I wrote down if my daughter died and I never got to see her again, because that was my real fear, that I would never get to make it right. And it took me a month of prayer, but I got okay with it. And I had the most unexplainable peace. I really thought my rights were going to get terminated. And I made plans for my life without being her mom. And about a week before trial, CPS changed their mind at the last minute. And I didn't know why until like a year after my daughter came home. But my daughter had requested to be moved so that she could be closer to me and maybe like bump into me. And so because she was in a home with strangers, they decided to give her back to me. And she came home in March of 2017. And our case closed in the fall of that year. And the day after my case closed, I went to my first court hearing with another family to support them. So I have been helping other parents literally since the day after my case closed. There was no parent, there was no one like me helping me, when I went through my case. And Jessica and I kind of think of ourselves kind of like the parent CASA, and so we just want to help give people what we didn't have in our cases. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about my daughter and I now. When she came home to me, she was returned to me, and I had an efficiency. I mean, we were in such a small place, and we're in a little bit bigger of a place now. It's not very big, but she has her own room. So that's a blessing. And we have a couple dogs and a yard and a garden. And that was literally all I wanted when I got to Abilene. I would envision me in my house with my garden and my daughter. And it is such a change from the life we had before, because I constantly used to have a boyfriend around. I didn't know how to be alone. I didn't know how to live on my own and trust God. And so he can change with treatment. I mean, anybody can change. And I have been homeless. My daughter has been in trap houses with me. She's seen me get beat up. I have worked in some really seedy places. I've been the worst of the worst, and God can restore and renew. And so I just hope that if y'all don't already know that, if you ever see a parent that you just think is so like hopeless, that that God can change anyone. And sorry, I skipped around, but I wanted to tell you a little bit more about my daughter. So she's now a sophomore. She was in 5th grade when she got returned. She played band all through middle school, and now she's doing something with gymnastics, helping with gymnastics. And she goes to a youth group every Wednesday and is very involved in that. So I'm really proud of her. She's a very, very good kid. And I'm really, really blessed, because I thought I was going to get punished for what I put my parents through. But anyway, so that is my story. And please forgive me because I've never done this. Okay. So to go back into our group and what we do, we will allow any parent to come, anybody, even if they don't have an open case or have never had a case, grandparents, and we will allow anyone to come to our group. Most of the time, it is parents. And like over 95% of the time, it's someone with an open case. And then, okay, so what we cover in our local groups, we do a personal story. So pretty much what I just went through with y'all. And then we go through a packet of information, which I'll go through here in a minute. And at the end, we answer questions, and we give about 1/3 of the hour to each of those. But we will stay and make sure that everybody gets their questions answered. Okay, I'm not going to go through all this, and I'm sorry because our class was always only in person until COVID. And so we never had to deal with this virtual stuff, but it's kind of a blessing. But anyways, that's why these look kind of not so good. We had to get the pictures on here like this and haven't gotten them formatted correctly. So anyways, this is just some definitions and then the legal timeline. And so we want to make sure people know about the year mark and that they understand that extension is not always going to get granted. These are some definitions, just talks about what the assessment is and intake, what those things mean, conservatorship. This is just legal timeline closer up. And if y'all want this PowerPoint, I can definitely send it to you. This is the legal timeline, but it's out of the family code. It's just kind of shortened and it has references so people can see what law these are from. And then this information is some resources. So this free legal hotline, if y'all don't know about this, this is an anonymous line people can call. It's answered by attorneys during business hours. And they don't give legal advice, but they will answer any CPS related question. And I've called them, I still call them, they're very helpful. And then if people have to make a complaint, this is for the Office of the Ombudsman, which is Consumer Affairs. And then the information to report a judge, report an attorney. And then this is this fraud inspector general thing. That's like very rare. I think I've given that out twice. If someone really thinks that something, that fraud's been committed in their case, then they should call the inspector general. And then this is requesting case records. So nobody who has an open case can get records on that open case, but as soon as their case is closed, they can request those. We let people know that it takes a long time. I requested mine about 6 months ago and still haven't gotten them. And the reason I waited so long to request mine was because there was a lot of allegations in there. And of all those allegations, only one thing was 100% accurate, and that was that I was a drug user. What was written in my allegations made me so mad that I couldn't even read it. So that's why it took me 5 years to request mine. Okay, and this is still what we go over with parents. So we give them just some things to keep in mind for visitation, being on time, and that, sometimes that's in their court order. And so if they're not on time, they're violating a court order. And so we make sure and talk to them about that. Just making sure that they are giving their attention in that visit to their children, especially if they're in one of those little rooms at the department, because sometimes it can be really hard to engage in those visits. And so we don't want anything to be held against them, even though sometimes it can be an awkward situation. And give them some ideas. So these are some things I did with my daughter. I would bring a movie. We made like quesadillas one time and just crafts and doll furniture. And so we just give them some ideas about visits. These rights are definitely not all their rights, but these are rights that are commonly not told to parents. And I don't want people to think that if they're in their addiction, I don't want them to use this as a way to like escape accountability, but I want to be fully transparent with people about their rights. And that's why I include this. So Texas is a one-party consent state. It's very common that parents, I'm just checking my time. Okay, it's very common that parents will say that the caseworker said they would do this or they promised this, and they don't have proof. And so, I just let them know it's your right to record. And, they don't have to ask permission to do that. Fourth Amendment rights, this is not for like people with an open case. But, you know, you have a right to not speak to a caseworker that comes to your door. I mean, we all know that anybody can call in an allegation and say anything, you know. You can have an angry neighbor, an angry ex. And if you do have prior CPS history and someone does call in like that and you haven't done anything wrong, you know, that can get, they can sometimes automatically assume something. And they don't, when they come to the door, you know, they don't have body cams, which I'm hoping to change that. But I just let people know, you know, that's your choice. But I do tell people if, you know, if you're in addiction, if you've relapsed or something, don't wait until CPS comes to your door. Don't wait till you have a case, you know, go get help, call me. And I have parents call me that have relapsed. And I always encourage people to go get treatment. But if they haven't done anything wrong, you know, then I like for people to know their rights. Extracurricular activities and appointments. So that's another thing. Parents don't know that they can go to those appointments and events sometimes, and they don't have to have that during a scheduled visitation. It doesn't even count as a visitation. That is their right. Sometimes judges will court order them that they're not allowed, but that's rare. You know, if someone has been polite and cooperative and everything like that, then they have the right to go to those events. And sometimes caseworkers don't even know that. So we like to let them know that. The next one is just kind of goes back to the Fourth Amendment thing. They can have a letter on file at school and daycare saying that CPS can't come interview their kids without their consent. And this is the thing. When a caseworker goes to a school, they don't have a database to verify the worker's employment. A copy is made of their ID and they are allowed to go into a room along with the child and interview them without a witness. And until that changes, you know, I'm not super comfortable with that. That's just my opinion in my soapbox, but okay. Okay, so about CASA, I want to tell y'all a little bit about my CASA story. So I've had 2 CASAs. The very first CASA I had was the one in my 2009 case. And he was such a blessing. He came up to me after court and said, your daughter loves you and she wants to be with you. You know, please do what you need to do. And that was huge because my caseworker in that case, at my very first visitation, so right in the beginning of my legal case, she said, why don't you just sign your rights over? You know you're not going to do it anyway. And so someone said hopeless, like, yeah, I was so hopeless. And that was a long time ago. I don't hear stories like that much anymore, but you know, that did happen. And so that CASA, what he said to me in court, I mean, that was just huge. And so my last CASA, that was on the case that ended in 2017. So she was great. I still talk to her actually. Her name was Barbara, and she did get very close to my daughter. She did not trust me for a long time. She did not want my daughter to get returned back to me. She was so mad when CPS moved her because my daughter asked to be moved, and she was very upset about that. And I proved her wrong though. We still talk, and she approves now. Okay, so the objectiveness thing, I mean, that's kind of obvious. I was really glad to hear your talk, Rebel, because I've never gotten to hear what y'all talk about or your perspective. And so I just really appreciated where y'all are coming from. As far as, you know, just treating people like they're human and trying to collaborate with them and that. So thank you. Okay, so I don't know if y'all know this. If you've been in court, a legal case, you probably, I guess if you're CASA, you've all been on a legal case, but rights, in family court, they're terminated on a preponderance of evidence, not beyond a reasonable doubt. And so that's just like greater than 50%. So that's really scary. And I just think it's really important to be very factual. Sometimes caseworkers get it wrong. So I don't know. I just think that's important to consider, but parents can recover and families can heal. I think, as far as addiction, that's my story. I don't have a lot of experience outside of that. So my solution, to someone like me is treatment. I mean, I don't know how anyone can get sober without treatment if they're on anything beyond like marijuana. I mean, I really think inpatient treatment is the answer. And also, I will say there's like a saying that an addict won't quit until they're ready to quit. And I do not believe that. That is not my story, because I did not want to quit when I went to treatment. Actually, I had every intention on getting my daughter back and going back to doing what I was doing, because I did not think I could live without some chemical. I hated myself when I woke up, and I just didn't see how I could live without some substance. And so that was, like I said, that was not my intention when I went to treatment, but it changed. It changed like in about 2 weeks. And so I always encourage people, like, just get to treatment, no matter how much you don't think it's going to work, no matter how much you hate the idea, just go, because I really believe that when people get those substances out of their body and they start learning how to rely on a higher power and some coping skills, that they begin to change their minds about recovery. Okay, so the comment about not talking about people and their case in front of them, I don't know how court's going these days. It seems like it's always on Zoom, but in my experience, when I would go to court, all the attorneys, everybody would be talking, and I would just be the only one standing there in the hallway, and they would be talking about my case right in front of me. And it just didn't feel very good. Also, Jessica and I are here. We love that things are changing more towards like getting people connected within the community and early intervention. Currently, my meeting is at a treatment center, and so I don't always get to people early. And if you have a parent that you think I could help, I mean, you are welcome. Please give them my contact information, because we want to get to people as early as possible. We really, really believe that when they come to our group, when they get to talk to us, that we help increase reunification and long-term sobriety. So our meetings, so Jessica and I both used to do Taylor County, but about a year ago, maybe a little longer, she moved to Comanche County. And so she's at Gateway of Hope in Comanche County, and I'm here in Taylor County. So this is our meeting time. The last meeting we had, Serenity House canceled due to COVID. And so I am about to have a virtual meeting set up. And basically what that will consist of is the first 2/3 of the meeting, my story and the packet information will be recorded. And then any parent that wants to get certified will need to Zoom me, and we'll have a conversation. I'll ask them some questions, make sure they watched it, and make sure they get their questions answered. And then I will give them a certificate. And so that's how we're going to do the virtual. But if there's anyone that y'all know of that could benefit from this right now, I will Zoom them anytime to get it done since the virtual is not ready yet. These are our flyers. So y'all probably got those in your email. There is an updated email address on there for myself. And then questions, I think, is where we're at. Yes. So please ask me any questions. Don't be shy.
Sarah, while I'm getting ready to ask their question, one of them, when She said about not talking about the case during visits. I believe what she's referring to is that we did have some issues with parents trying to talk about the case to the kids. And then that was creating some difficulty instead of spending that time bonding with the kids.
Yes, yeah, CPS always tells parents not to do that. It can get really hard if they're a little like older. But I do understand that, you know, some parents are going to go back out and relapse. And if they start making promises, it can be even more traumatizing. And so I understand why they ask that. But I've not seen that question on here. So did I answer that right?
Brianna, did that answer the question, or was it really just more of a comment that just to encourage the?
Yeah, it was more of a comment. I was
okay.
Because everything you listed was really, really good. I was just pointing out that was also one that I know of that's really looked at. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. Thank you.
And Sarah's comment about court, I want to encourage you guys to really be respectful and be very cognizant of that when we're having those little pre-court collaborations. I even try to really watch how close are the kids, because we do have some kids. We are back in person, Sarah, for most of our hearings, except for last week and this week. The judge was exposed to COVID. So we go back to in person on September 7th. So please, you guys, just be very cognizant of who's standing around. And if you need to go off to have a conversation that's a little bit more difficult, be respectful of the kids and the parents that are there. You know, we don't want to demean anybody. So be very cognizant of that. What other questions do you guys have?
I have a question.
Hi.
And I'm sorry, I'm not showing the video because I'm quarantined with my children at home, and I excuse the noise if you hear any. I was actually on Sunday, I got a call from the parents of in my case. I think my first interaction with them was sometime last week, and they called me on Sunday, and they made a comment that is prompting this question. They feel as if everybody is against them and everybody is looking at everything they can, every single detail to fight them. Those were literally their words. They're here to fight us, so we cannot trust anybody. And one of the questions on the poll was about trust. So in your experience, what would you give us advice on how to make sure that parents trust us? Although, you know, one of my same statements to them was, I'm here to represent your children's voice and work on, you know, what's best for them.
Right.
Are first, but I'm also interested in what you have to say. What about trust? You know?
Yeah, that is such a hard question to answer, and I get it and think about it a lot, because everybody involved is required to share any information the parents give. And so it's very hard, because if I were a parent, I would want to hear, I'm not going to go run and tell your caseworker everything. And y'all can't say that, you know, but I think it starts with just how you treat them, you know, just being respectful. And, you know, and I think use discretion, because there are some people who will literally write down every detail that the parent says. And sometimes it's not even necessary, but I could always tell who CPS had talked to based on what new information they got. And so if there's something that's really not important, it's not harming the child, you know, try and keep confidential what you can, you know. I mean, that would make me feel, that would make me trust someone. And I'll say, someone asked you on here, do you feel better that CPS, or that, is it better that CPS, since becoming too engaged, has it changed? Has it gotten better? And I will say yes, absolutely. There's been a big change, like in the last year and a half. And I mean, it seems like people are really wanting the parents to get their kids back. And I let people know that now. I mean, it makes me so happy to get to share that to the parents that we work with, because it didn't feel like that before. And I've been on a meeting with the CASA, with CPS. It was a mediation. And there was a mom on there and her mother-in-law, and the husband was passed away, her husband. So, but the mother-in-law had the kids and wanted to keep the kids and was like fighting her for custody, and she was not very nice. And, you know, about halfway through the meeting, CPS just said, or To Engage said, they asked the mom, do you want her on here? And she was like, not really. And they made the mother-in-law get off the call. And I thought that was really great. I mean, I don't like when people aren't getting along, but it felt like they were advocating for that mom who was really doing everything that she was supposed to do. And, you know, she was in treatment, and they saw that the mother-in-law was kind of the one causing the tension. And they, you know, instead of siding with her, which has been my experience during my case, it was really great to see everyone advocating for that mom.
Sarah, my name is Wendy, and I'm the Collaborative Family Engagement Coordinator here at CASA. I think we've talked on the phone before, but first of all, just think what you're doing is amazing. Like, it is exactly what our moms need. They need people to walk with them, who've been there and done that, you know, and really have that experience. And that's something a lot of us can't really offer them. But, you know, we started CFE a year ago, and really, really believe that kids are better off with their parents if it's safe to be there, you know, and that's really where our practice is moving. Like, how do we engage parents to work as a team to get this reunification back? And one of the kind of unexpected blessings of COVID has been that we've gotten these extensions that have extended the timeline for parents, because I know a lot of times, you know, it didn't take a parent a year to get into the situation they're in. So sometimes it's going to take more than a year to get out of the situation that they're in. So like, I guess one thing is like, how do you suggest we engage parents early in the process, and really so that we can not fight against this timeline that we're on?
My thought, because I feel like if I had someone like me that, you know, sponsorship and recovery, I mean, you work with another addict, right? And so that's why I feel like if I had someone who had been through it when I was in my case, it would have been so helpful. And I mean, because that's one of the first things you ask, like, have you ever had your kids taken? You know, do you even have kids? And it's like, a lot of times they don't even have kids, the caseworkers. So what I'm working on is a video that y'all can share with parents, just a message from me. Actually, Jessica and I are both working on one, but just that you can say, here's this YouTube link. Just listen to what they have to say. Because sometimes, you know, we can't even get them to call us. You know, we can give you our information, and sometimes they still don't even call us. And so if they could have this link, I'm hoping that would help. I mean, and of course, reassuring them like things are changing. We're not trying, this isn't the old way. And, you know, if it's an addict that you've met other parents, you know, that have been successful with treatment, and I guess just reassuring them, reassuring them that that's not what y'all want to do. And, you know, if people are really in their addiction bad, sometimes they're just not going to hear it. But I think over time, the reputation of the department, To Engage and CASA is going to change. And I think it's going to get easier.
sorry, I have a
Well, I
quick
think
follow, I have a quick follow-up, and then I'm gonna,
Okay.
okay, I'm sorry. And then I'm gonna turn off my camera. I mean, my thing.
You're
But,
okay.
so, okay, but Sarah, I'm assuming, I mean, I know you have a life. So like, how accessible are you? Like if or if we're with a parent that we think would benefit from some connection to your group, and we're like, no, we're calling her right now.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, what do you do with your time? Like, do you have another job, or do you do this full time? Like,
This is like all volunteer, but I will make myself available as much as possible. I have a really flexible schedule. I'm in school, I clean houses, I do like all sorts of odd jobs. So I have a really, really flexible schedule. If you do call me, and by the way, I want to make sure and give y'all my number. I know Jessica likes the email, but I don't mind y'all having my number. If you call me, make sure if you can shoot a text. If not, at least leave a voicemail, because I get a lot of spam calls. And so sometimes I won't answer, but I'll call right back. And absolutely, like I will take the call if I'm available. So yeah, please call me. I want you to.
Mhm. Well, and I think it's really important that, we know CASA advocates for the best interests of the children, and we all want those families to be reunified. We want them to succeed. And I love that, like with what Wendy was talking about and with what you've talked about, it takes all of the parties really working together to make that happen, because it's not going to be an easy fix. I love the cases that are a little more simple, that they, things work out a lot quicker. But the reality is most of these cases, it's going to take time. And I love that you both pointed that out. One of the things that you talked about was the attendance at appointments and events. I want to remind our advocates that unless there's an order for them not to participate, parents should be included in these school appointments. And we want them included on these decisions if possible. So make sure that if that parent doesn't know about that meeting, and you know that it's okay for them to be there, there's not a court order preventing them from going, make sure that they know about that school appointment. Because sometimes it's not that the engaged worker, the caseworker, doesn't want to include them, they just don't think to.
Yeah.
So be proactive to say, hey, we're going to go in and have this ARD meeting or whatever it is. Invite them to meet you there, if that is, as long as it's not prohibited by that order. The other thing is that when Sarah hit on this about, and the Judge Probst has talked about this, we have to be willing to be objective, and we have to be willing to change our stance and our opinion. And of course, at first, we're getting to know the parents, we're watching and monitoring to see how they're going to do their services. And when possible, and those parents can make those changes, just like the judge has to change her opinion on cases, because at first she's choosing to allow the removal of those kids. And she says all the time, I have to be willing to change my opinion because I'm the one that makes the decision to put those kids back in the home. We have to be willing to look objectively at these parents, at the situations. And sometimes it's not 100% yet, but is it minimum sufficient level? Can they provide safety? Can they provide security? Can they provide that minimum level of care? And if it is, we need to be willing to look at that. So just keep that in the back of your mind as well. What other questions do you guys have? Anything? Oh, Christy asked, what time are the meetings on Monday nights?
I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's okay.
I was trying to get the chat pulled back up. So on Monday.
Oh, okay. So stop sharing.
I think I got it. I got it now.
Okay, you got the chat? Okay.
Yeah. So it's the first and third Monday of the month, and it's 6 p.m. It's typically, it's in the chapel at Serenity House, but they have paused the in-person. So I'll just send you an email when they resume. But I'm working with To Engage to try and do in person at their office. So hopefully, you know, regardless of what Serenity does, we can do in person over there. But yeah, if you know any parents right now that need a meeting, I will go through everything with them and I'll do a virtual meeting with them. And I put my phone number in the chat.
Okay, good. And one last note that I had taken, you had mentioned about how when you encourage parents that when they relapse to immediately get back into care, you know, get help. One of the things that we talk about in our training is that during that service plan, the family, now they call it the initial permanency planning conference or whatever, you know, it changes, but it used to be the family group conference. One of the things I encourage our advocates to do is to talk about a relapse plan, because the odds are a relapse could happen. So how can we prepare for it? And one of the things that I do encourage the advocates to say is just have a plan and self-disclose. Man, if you can jump right back on the wagon immediately and get help and self-disclose, don't wait for that UA to come back for us to find out the hard way. Just tell us, let's jump. It just helps build trust, and it helps build that ability to believe that the parents can overcome it. So is that a good thing for us to encourage at that meeting? Do you agree with that, Sarah?
Oh, yes. If they're in an open case, absolutely. If their case is closed,
Right, that's different. No.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, they have to, because that's going to look really bad if CPS is under the impression they've been sober, and then, yeah.
Okay. And then the last thing I had was about the recording. So we get asked this question all the time. Can we record visits? Can we record conversations? We encourage our advocates not to do that because we feel like it's a trust issue with those that we're engaging with. And of course, it's not admissible, you know, in court or anything like that. Do the parents disclose if they're recording a conversation, or do they just kind of do it? I mean, that's a blanket question. I know that may not have a blanket answer, but
I'm really not sure. I mean, most of the people I talk to don't record.
Okay.
I always tell them, you know, the one party consent state laws. And, you know, I don't know about working with CASA, but when working with CPS, you know, I've heard some horror stories, and
yeah, so it's more covering making sure they have the facts.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to let you know that we do not encourage our advocates to record. So just so you know that they don't have to worry about that on our side.
That's good.
Let me see. Someone sent me a message. Does anybody else have questions? Oh, that was just a message. It wasn't a question. Well, guys, I think we got a lot of great information. It really is encouraging to see what kind of support these parents have. I wish it could be court ordered. I think y'all said you're working towards that.
There's some regions that are. Most of us believe that when it's court ordered, that they don't trust their local group as much, and that's why we haven't done it. But
okay. Well, we hope we can at least encourage them. If they're not already participating, we can encourage that. We can bring it up at our family group planning meeting, well, our initial permanency plan meeting, guys. You know, feel free to offer this resource to the parents on your cases. If they're not plugged in, I think it's a great thing to do. Sarah, anything else in closing?
I just want to say thank y'all so much. This has been a really good experience for me, and I can't wait to share with parents, you know, where y'all are coming from, and to be able to tell them good things about y'all. So I just really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you. It was all the comments on there, you know, what a blessing that you are and this program is, and how helpful and informative it's been. And so we really do appreciate you, Sarah. Thank you for telling us your story and being vulnerable. That really, I knew a little bit of it, but I don't remember the whole story. And so thank you. And we're so proud of you. What a success that you are, and what you've overcome, and how resilient you are, and how resilient your daughter is. And so thank you for sharing that, and for being vulnerable with us and trusting us with your story. We appreciate your time today. Guys, I'm going to be sending you guys an email. We're going to have a training next week as well on Wednesday that's going to be about life books for our kids. So it's kind of fun and engaging. So I'll email you that. You have Sarah's contact information if you have questions, and I'll make sure you have the most current version of that handout with her updated email on there. But give her a round of applause and thank yous for coming today. Sarah, we appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.